Also, again, not just limiting the hiring and firing, but saying, okay, we're going to limit what you can talk about. And so that's what makes this situation unique and different.
Margaret, thank you for coming again.
Of course, no, I'm happy to be here.
I was really excited after our last conversation because one, the reception was really great, and two, I was like, gosh, if Margaret really likes this and people liked seeing her on here, I wonder like if I could get her back, every couple months and like touch up on things. And here you are, like a week later. So like,
well, we've got some big news to talk about out in Eagle.
Right. So look, walk me through it. I was at the city council meeting on Tuesday. I had seen some things on the agenda the night before. I'm like, this seems really, and I had never been to a city council meeting. I'm like, why don't I just go? Like, it's like 5 minutes away, 10 minutes away. And again, I don't live in Eagle, but I was like, I'll just go down. No problem. It was wild, but walk me through it because your article yesterday was fantastic. I read it and I want to hear about the background and the information you got.
Yeah. So Monday night, there was an update on the Eagle City Council agenda, and there were 3 items on there. And those 3 items, and they were all linked together in a series, essentially limited the powers of the mayor right before Brad Pike is supposed to take office. And so and that was done by what we call a lame duck mayor and council. Well, the mayor didn't vote on it, but a lame duck council, which means that there's been an election, but the new folks have not come in. And sometimes you see these changes where, if a group of people lose an election or there's going to be a change, they, oh, quick, we got to do some stuff before the new folks come in. And that's what we saw. So these 3 ordinances or votes, 2 of them were ordinances. One of them basically said we're going to have 3 what's called auxiliary positions that assist the mayor. And those 3 people, they can't be promoted and they can't be let go or have their position changed without the council approving. And that those 3 people were the economic development specialist, the public information officer who puts out press releases and speaks to the media, and the long range planning director. And those 3 people now, without the council's approval, Pike can't make any changes to those.
Okay, now this is interesting because somebody was saying these people serve it like the mayor's pleasure, essentially. And again, I don't know if that's the right word, but he gets to pick his team. So if the new mayor-elect comes in, he's like, all right, look, I'm the mayor now. I'm in charge of the city employees by and large. I would like this person to be my public information officer, or this person to do this, or this person to do this. Thank you for your service. But like, I'm the mayor now and I'm in charge of the employees. That's standard practice, as specifically in Eagle, right? I know other towns may do it differently, but like that's what Eagle has done for a long time.
Well, yeah, and that's really standard in all cities, is essentially, especially what we call a strong mayor city, where the mayor is the chief administrator of the city. They're going to pick those staff members. They're going to be in charge of all of those sorts of departmental decisions, department heads, all those things. So it's unusual to have council sort of have that check on power and say, no, we have these 3 people that the former mayor that, Jason Pierce appointed, Brad Pike, you can't touch these folks. And that is especially important because we are going to have 4 council members who, I've talked about this on the last show, and I've talked about this in all my reporting, they are not fans of Brad Pike, and they have been very clear supporters of Jason. And so they are going to be almost like a firewall to sort of block Brad Pike from doing a lot of things and that he might want to do. And this sort of makes changes. And during the meeting, Pike, no one said a whole lot. I think, and before they voted this in, Pike saying, well, why are we doing this now? Why are we doing this now? And the explanation that Mayor Pierce gave was, this is what council wanted to do. And it's so these people can't become department heads, and these people cannot be let go. And that was the explanation. The other item that they enacted,
and I'm sorry, just for this point, Brad kept asking, why are we doing this, right? And there was I kept waiting because I was listening really intently. I'm like, yeah, I mean, I have no idea. Maybe there's a really good reason, right? But there was no reason offered. Like the council members did not respond saying, hey, Brad, I would like it this way because, and Mayor Pierce did not provide like, okay, well, functionally, this has been a problem throughout my time as mayor, and I'm just making this repair right now. Yeah, it's coming late, but like, this is actually better for the citizens of Eagle for these reasons. There was no, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I was sitting there like, wait, they're not even giving a reason why they're all voting 3-1, obviously, for these things, correct?
Right. So there really wasn't a time where someone made a case for it. It was just, okay, we're in power now for another 3 weeks, and this is what we're going to do. And I want to be clear. We are here on the show, and I'm here on the show as a journalist explaining what occurred. You can feel about it however you want to feel about it. If you think this is great, that is great. If you don't, that is also great too. This is just literally what happened, and you can watch the meeting and see for yourself.
Right. And again, I'm not saying whether it's good or bad. I was waiting for an explanation. No explanation came. I'm not a citizen of Eagle. You're not a citizen of Eagle. I was there. You were watching it online. We were talking about it at the time. We're reporting what happened.
Exactly.
Continue on.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that's super clear for your viewers here. But so the next thing that they enacted was a change that said that the agenda for the meeting, what they're going to vote on, what they're going to talk about, that is going to be set by the mayor and the city council president working in collaboration. I use that in quotes because that is what was written in the ordinance. And it didn't really spell out, okay, does that mean the council president gets a veto on whatever mayor, the soon-to-be Mayor Pike wants to do? Does that mean that the mayor gets some items and the council president gets other items on the agenda? It's really not clear. But if that does end up working where the city council president can totally control the agenda, it means that Mayor Pike, soon to be Mayor Pike, can never bring an item that says, hey, I want to talk about the senior center, which is something that he cares about and some people who voted for him care about.
Right. It was a position that he ran on. Specifically, he wanted to bring, harmony back to the senior center.
Yeah. Or I want to talk about the Arts Commission or I want to talk about police funding. He, outside, it's really going to narrow his ability to bring things up. Like in media, we have a term called agenda setting, which is like, the idea that like the media doesn't tell you what to think. The media tells you what to think about because, you're bringing up a topic and then it's, people are thinking about it. And that's why this is really powerful because if Pike can't bring up something that he wants to bring up because the council president is vetoing it, he's kind of dead in the water. And this is like what I talked about on your show last time. I think a lot of folks were thinking, oh my gosh, Pike is going to be able to become mayor and then everything will change. And I was saying, hold up, council is a major check on his power. And now they're going to be even more of a check because of these changes.
So this is a really unique one. And again, I'm not as well versed in politics as you are, but with the checks and balances, right? Like the whole nature of having a mayor and then a council and having an agenda and then the council considers it. The mayor theoretically, it appears, was classically the person who was like boots on the ground, full-time employee, in charge of everyone in the city, really listening to constituents. And yeah, it's not that the constituents can't reach out to the city council people, but the mayor was the one like going around everywhere and talking to everyone and really saying like, okay, look, this is an issue that needs like city council. This is the information that we have, and city council, this is the issue that we really need to consider and talk about. And, let's talk amongst ourselves in this meeting or in, whatever, not in private. What is that executive session where they go back into a room?
Yep.
Yeah, great. So, but the bottom line is that was kind of the balance that the mayor got to do these, bring the stuff up, and then the council would get to make a decision on it.
Yep.
Right. And the mayor only voted in a tie. Now, if it's not that way, and again, collaboration is a very nebulous term. It's like, what does that mean? Does that mean that like they have to talk about it, but if there's a conflict in interest, like you're saying, with any of these particular issues that are very near and dear to soon to be Mayor Pike, if the council president doesn't want to talk about those, they don't get to talk about them, right? So he can't bring them up. What is it? If that does come to pass, there is no real balance of power there then, right? Because the mayor doesn't have a vote, and the mayor would then no longer have the capacity to steer the conversation or bring up things that not steer the consideration, not steer the conversation, but steer the consideration of the council. Am I getting that correct?
Yeah, and that would basically say, okay, council is now going to get to decide what gets brought up, what gets voted on, and Pike is just going to be there. And so that's why this has been distressing for some folks. We've had some community members, particularly Pike supporters, have been upset about this online. But then you've also seen some criticism from like people who are well-known Republican leaders, like former Eagle Mayor Nancy Merrill. She was on KTVB saying that she didn't think that this move was appropriate, and I think she was a Pierce supporter, right?
I believe so. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and so like for her to come out, a former two-time mayor of Eagle, and say, "Hey, I don't think this is the right move," because the mayor should be able to hire and fire who he wants. And then former Idaho Attorney General, well-known Republican David Leroy, he's a lawyer. He came out and on KTVB on the same segment and said, "Yeah, I think the people have spoken and they're making this change, kind of in spite of an election." And so this has been an unorthodox move. Whether you support it or not, this is something I've never seen before.
Okay. Bringing up David Leroy, the attorney, there's a friend of mine a long time ago. Again, I was growing up in California, and they started passing marijuana laws in California. And I'm not like a big marijuana advocate or something, but my friend said, yeah, it doesn't really matter on a federal level. Like, okay, I understand they didn't pass it federally, but like, what do you mean? Like from a Californian standpoint, isn't it regardless? Like, no, look. If you have a federal law and a state, a lower government passes a law that conflicts with the federal law holds. If you have a state law and a city tries to pass a law, the state law holds, right? To pass a law that conflicts with the state law, then the state law holds. Is there state law or precedent set already in Idaho for whether or not you can strip a mayor of these powers, or is it kind of like, hey, do whatever you want?
So it's especially interesting because Idaho is what's called a Dyan Rule state, and this is like a really nerdy thing. But so, and that means being a Dyan Rule state means that local governments can only do explicitly what the state government says you can do. If the state government says you can do this thing, you can do it. But if they don't say anything, you're limited. And so that's really the environment of this, is like local governments really have to do what the state wants. And so there's some laws, couple sections that outline what are the powers of the mayor, and they specifically outline the mayor's chief administrator of the city. And I think the phrase was like maintains order or something like that. And it was basically like he's going to have the absolute, authority to run the city. And so this kind of like, there's an argument to be made, and I wonder if someone will make it, that this might not be a legal move. Again, I'm not saying it's illegal. I don't know. But like, it would not surprise me if someone tries to argue this in court. And then there's also 2 other statutes that say, hey, the mayor can bring a special meeting, and that the council can bring a special meeting. And so there's all these things in state law that outline, here's what council does, here's what mayor does. And then we have this change, and you could possibly conflict with those things. These are all unanswered questions because I don't know if this has been tried before. And so really it's going to be up to, if this does become a legal battle, which at this point we don't know if it will. This could just go on and just be done. But if this does become a legal battle, those are going to be the questions about, okay, so the state law says this is what a mayor does, and this is what council does, especially in a strong mayor system. Eagle, this change doesn't align with that. And so we're going to have to just see how this plays out. And I'm sure that there's all kinds of attorneys, who are looking at this, who love this stuff, who are going, man, maybe this is legal, maybe not. And because it's a really interesting legal question.
Gotcha. The 3 ordinances, there was the auxiliary employees,
yep,
right? There was the agenda setting. What was the third?
The third, and the third was just appointing those folks to the auxiliary positions.
Gotcha.
It was okay. We're changing up the auxiliary positions. We're making them so that the mayor needs council approval. Here's the 3 people we're putting in those spots, and then the agenda issue.
Gotcha. So it's literally like the public information officer in particular, how the city is communicating with its constituents, what they're communicating about. That is no longer that person is no longer essentially an employee of the mayor. That person's essentially responsible to the council. So that rather, I think I'm not describing this correctly, but the point is, if the public information officer decides to emphasize something or put out something that when Mayor Pike becomes mayor, he does not approve of, his recourse is very limited with what he can do with that person. Say he thinks something is very, very important and newsworthy and he wants to put out a communication, say something with the senior center, right? And he's like, I want to put out a communication to the city and the citizens about the senior center in this thing. And the public information officer is like, yeah, we're not putting that on city letterhead. He can't say, okay, we'll do it or you're fired. That person just says, yeah, I'm not going to do that. And then he would have to appeal to the city council and say, hey, city council, I want to put out this communication. This person's not letting me. I want that person to get fired, which he couldn't even bring up as an agenda item because he doesn't have control of the agenda. But they could just be like, yeah, we don't want to put out a communication about the senior center either. And then that's it.
Right. And these are all like, this is a hypothetical situation at this point,
Sure.
But that really shows that, okay, if the mayor can't hire and fire someone, then that kind of creates this weird situation where, okay, well, how do I deal with this person? What do I do? And things could go well. Maybe those folks will say, all right, I'm going to work with Mayor Pike and it's going to go great. But we just don't know how this is going to play out. The other thing that I wonder about is if often during elections you see someone win and they become mayor and then their campaign presence just sort of quiets down before they run again. You will see, because they are the mayor now, so they're going to speak through the city. If they have something to say, they're going to put out a statement that says the city of Eagle is doing this or says this, or they're promoting coffee with the mayor like Mayor Pierce does through the city channels because they have the city like apparatus to support them in their message because they are the city at this point. I wonder if these changes and how tightly controlled Pike could be or will be under this new council means that campaign presence is not going to go away, because that is the way that he can talk to people that he has total control over, posting on social media, posting on his Facebook page, doing these, sorts of things. And I wonder if that page is going to become a big part of how he's communicating with people as opposed to
his communication mechanism.
Right, because he maybe doesn't want to use the city PIO, or he doesn't have control to put things on the agenda the way, Mayor Pierce and his predecessors did. And so it sort of changes the dynamic in many ways, and I'm going to be curious to see how it impacts how people are perceiving the city and how they're perceiving him.
Well, first off, one thing you said, that this situation had hypothetical. Absolutely, it's hypothetical. Like, we have no knowledge. I mean, first off, he hasn't taken office yet.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, he hasn't been hamstrung, all these things. But in structuring governments, you always structure with the hypothetical in mind. That's why we have checks and balances. And if everybody gets along and nobody tries to abuse power, that's wonderful. But in the event that someone does, we have checks and balances, right? Like, that's the whole nature of these structures, right? Like, I hope I never get in a car accident, but I put my seatbelt on for the hypothetical, right? So the modification of the balance of power is just curious. One other thing that I wanted to ask you about, because I think you followed Mayor Pierce's campaign. I mean, I just moved here 2 years ago. I'm a monkey, right? You've been here for a long time. Was there any communication from the Eagle administration that there was a problem with the existing structure, right? Like, was there ever a point in Mayor Pierce's tenure that of where he said, okay, we really have to change the structure of government and the balance of power here? Like, there should definitely be employees that I don't have control over hiring and firing, or like, we definitely need to change the agenda setting so that the council president can set the agenda and not me, the mayor. Like, was there any indication that Mayor Pierce was displeased with the way that the government was structured while he was mayor, and felt that perhaps like, okay, we need to make this change and I'm running out of time to make this change and it's going to be better for the city's citizens of Eagle?
I have not heard this discussed before. It just popped up Monday night. I've never heard it discussed publicly as an issue before, and now here we are. And again, this timing, it's right before someone that he really didn't want to become mayor is now going to be mayor. The only thing I can think of that was similar to this was a couple years ago, right before the Ada County Highway District, their commission was going to flip. And as the former folks were out the door, they gave a multi-year contract to their executive staff person. I can't recall his exact title at the time, that basically said he's on contract for X years, and if you let him go, you need to pay out this much money. And because there were fears in those folks who were outgoing and who had lost control of the board effectively, that, oh man, this new group of folks is going to come in and
screw up this whole thing,
and they're gonna get rid of our executive staff person who we really like, and we don't want them to make a change, so we're going to do this.
But they didn't. Okay, understood there. So there's a financial penalty, right? There's a fiscal obligation, which is, hey, even if you let him go, you still have to pay out his salary or something. But they said, you can still let him go, though.
And they put a term limit. They said, I can't remember if it was, I think it was 2 years. Maybe 3. I can't remember how many, exactly what year it was off the top of my head. Whereas I scoured that agenda, and I could be wrong on this, but I looked and I was like, well, how long is this in effect for? What is their term? Is this 2 years? Is this 3 years? Is this 5 years? I mean, who knows? I did not see a specific year number. If there is, someone comment and tell me what it is, because I really would like to know.
Comment below. Like and share, subscribe.
Yeah, and so that is a very, different situation. And then also, again, not just limiting the hiring and firing, but saying, okay, we're going to limit what you can talk about. And so that's what makes this situation unique and different. And so we're just going to have to see how it plays out.
We're just going to have to see. You and I are going to have to see, because we don't live in Eagle, and it's wild watching what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's one of those things where I'm curious about state law, right? I'm curious about clarification on what collaboration means. I'm curious to see, the example you brought up of in the event that this doesn't get reversed or challenged, how does Pike function then with the citizens of Eagle? How does he communicate with them if there's conflict with his official stance? Does it become like he starts doing rallies and stuff? I don't know, because you see some politicians do that. They go, Trump, I'm not saying Pike is Trump, but Trump very famously kind of changed the game with continuing these campaign rallies and continuing these events while he was president. Not like president coming up for election. It's like a month later, he's at another rally, getting people cheered up. So there's a lot of communication about the ways that people use technology and change the political game, right? And again, Trump was very famous for using Twitter in a way that no one else had done before. And it's going to be interesting if those types of things get flipped around on a local level. I was listening to a Rogan the other day. I very much love Rogan. And I think it was Patrick Bet-David, and he were talking about how the nature of politics and media are completely changing. And they were hypothesizing that this coming election will probably be the last large national election where the news media, the classic establishment, has control of the narrative. Because it's like you see RFK going around on every podcast, and the only thing they can do is censor those podcasts on YouTube, but he's getting the word out really effectively about his thing. Now, I'm not saying you have to like him or dislike him, but he is actually utilizing quite effectively an alternate form of media that's completely decentralized and very difficult to control, and is not beholden to investors, right? That's one of the biggest criticisms of Fox or CNN or whatever. It's they have to do what the money guys say. Well, not a dude on YouTube. The dude on YouTube is I'm going to just post this interview, very much like I'm about to do this one. Anyway, so Margaret, listen, I know you're on a time crunch. Is there anything we're missing as far as details and facts of the situation?
No, I think that about covers it. If you care about this issue or any other ones that, in Eagle or in your local government, get involved, talk to your, on either side, get involved, talk to your council members, talk to your mayor, either your current one or your coming mayor, and, get engaged. And also, you can read more of my coverage about Eagle at BoiseDev.com.
One more question for you.
Yeah.
The restricting public comment. I understand. I was actually
we didn't even bring that up.
No, we didn't. I was actually speaking with Senator Trakel 2 days ago. A wonderful interview, by the way. Really enjoy it. And anyway, he was saying, we were talking about bills that they went over in 23, and he said, look, honestly, like 3 bills really hijacked the entire session. He was like, it was the bathroom bill, the book bill, and then property tax bill. He was like, there were a lot of other bills and things that he was interested in discussing more, and things that he's excited about this coming session. So one of the things he was saying was requiring room for public comment in public hearings. And he said, because it is absolutely not something that's required by state law. It's something that can be removed, as we saw on Tuesday night. So there was no public comment. People understood what was on the agenda. The citizens of Eagle were not able to make their opinions known, be it positive or negative. How frequently do the city council meetings remove public comment in Eagle?
I have every Eagle meeting that I have watched over the years, and I have not watched them all, have had public comment at the beginning and at the end of the meeting. And essentially the way I perceive it as, okay, you can come and you can tell us your thoughts before we vote, and then you can tell us your thoughts after we vote. But that is also but it's also like a time for people to talk about things that are not going to have a public hearing during the meeting. So, someone couldn't come and talk about, like, if there's already going to be a public hearing on a topic, like on, we're going to build a subdivision,
Sure.
People have to comment in that specific area. But like, that has been kind of a hallmark of Eagle public meetings that makes Eagle unique, is you can show up at Eagle and talk about, hey, I've got this problem in my neighborhood, or hey, I don't like what you did with the park, or all of these things. And then if you don't like their vote, you can get up at the end and say, hey, I don't like the vote that you made. I think that was really uncool. And so then we show up on Tuesday night, and that was just missing. There really wasn't an explanation for why, hey, so we got a long meeting tonight. We don't have time to do public comment. There was just, all right, we're moving on. We're getting into the business of the night. And I was not in the room, so I don't know what the mood was, but, I think it would not surprise me if there were folks who were wanting to come and speak their mind.
Right. And this is not always the argument that I heard some people say, which is like, well, the comment could drag on. With the Avamore public comments, like 300 something people, like, it was my understanding that it was kind of like a multi-day thing. Again, I wasn't there down at City Hall, but people were like, these comments went on forever, and people wanted their voices heard about annexing in somebody or an area into the city. And so the idea that it's like, well, it would have taken a long time. It's like, there's precedence for that in Eagle. People take a long time. So with important matters, people are allowed to voice their opinion, even if it's inconvenient from a time frame standpoint. Like, it's just, I was just thinking about that. It's like, when's the last time they removed public comment? So,
well, it's also important to really like make a distinction between public comment that is required by code and public comment that is not. As of now, unless Senator Trakel passes some new legislation, right? Like, as of right now, you and I don't have legal right to go to a city council meeting and just tell them our thoughts prior to a meeting or after, the way Eagle does. That is a special bonus. But if you're doing land use stuff like Avamore, annexing Avamore, building a subdivision, whatever, there is a legal requirement that is set out in the Local Land Use Planning Act that says you have the right to give comment. And so when we talk about those Avamore things, or the zoning code in Boise, or some of those issues where we had we had a week of hearings,
sure,
those are required by code. And so Eagle technically, you're right, we do have precedents for people to go on a long time in those comments, but that was required by law. Whereas folks that, get to have that informal period, that is something the mayor and the city council has control over. They can say, we're done with this. And I think important context here is, let's go back to the meeting the week before the election. What happened at that meeting? Public comment opened up, and it was just person after person essentially campaigning for who they wanted.
Right.
Making a pitch for Mayor Pierce and making a pitch for Brad Pike. And I think there was some frustration from some people about, okay, let's get to the meeting, and why are we sitting up here like using this to just like, someone used the word in my email about hijacking this meeting.
Right.
To just go, to just like say what they want. And
right. Demand a debate, or demand a, apology, or demand a this or a demand a that. Yeah, right.
Or to say, hey, I think you shouldn't be mayor anymore. Or, hey, Pike, I don't think you should be mayor. And so, I think that irritated some people. And it would not surprise me if that meeting, and then also that whole, like, all those folks sharing their thoughts, that made it on KTVB. And so it would not surprise me if, there was some irritation about how long that took, and then how it sort of like overshadowed the rest of the meeting, that there was a feeling of, okay, we're just going to do it. We're going to do what we're going to do. And there's, we don't need to be required to do public comment. I am curious if it'll come back though, now that they've made that change, or if this is a permanent something they're doing away with.
So I just want to be clear on this. It's required by law that you have public comment when you're doing something like annexing in Avamore.
Yep.
But it's not required that you give public comment when you change the structure of the city government.
To my knowledge, yes. Not a lawyer, but like,
not a lawyer, just Margaret.
I just stayed in a Holiday Inn Express last night.
Oh my God.
That's a joke for the people watching cable TV 20 years ago.
Oh my God, Margaret, you're the best. Thank you so much for coming. Anything else before we cut it?
Nope.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for coming in. Thank you for making the time. I know this was a real crunch to get you in here, so thanks for laying it out. Until next time.
All right. Thank you so much.
This podcast is brought to you by MTU Studios. If you're looking to start a podcast or need content for your business or personal use, content of any type, please reach out to MTU Studios. MTUstudios.com. We'd love to help.